Hey, this is Michael with XForcePC. I'm here with our new titanium system, which replaces our very successful white lightning system. And first of all, this thing looks a lot smaller than it actually is, and that's because I'm kind of standing in front of it. Now watch, I'll go around behind here, behind the counter. And now it probably looks pretty huge. So don't let the way I'm standing make it look overly small or overly big. This is a mid-tower case, so it is not as big as a full tower, but it's a little bit bigger than your standard mini tower that you see in Best Buy or Staples or whatever. So it's a pretty good size. It allows for lots of expandability and really good cooling. So we've been using this case for a while, the Phantom 410 case. Been very happy with it. It allows us to hide most of the wires behind the motherboard. And so, it's been very good. So we'll talk about that some more in a minute when we talk about the cooling. Some of the innovations of the titanium system over its predecessor, the White Lightning, include, number one, the memory. The memory is now DDR4. So on the White Lightning, we're using DDR3 1600 megahertz memory. Now we're using DDR4 2400 megahertz memory. So what is that, 50% faster off the top of my head? Memory speeds don't revolutionize the computing experience, but every little bit helps, and so it's kind of a cumulative effect. It's a nice to have, and when you add in all the other things, it does make a nice difference. Another difference when it comes to the memory is the support for 16 gigabyte DIMMs. These are the memory modules. That DIMM stands for dual inline memory module. But it's these sticks of RAM, that's what's called a DIMM. And the White Lightning supported 8 gigabyte DIMMs, and now this supports up to 16 gigabyte DIMMs. So the overall system supports 64 gigs of RAM, whereas the White Lightning maxed out at 32. So it supports twice as much RAM. Now you'll probably never need 64 gigs of RAM, but it's nice to know you have that if you need it. Another innovation has to do with the USB on the system. So what we have now on the titanium, and this is the motherboard from the titanium system, is we have USB 3.1. So you're probably used to seeing, the blue USB 2.0s, right, and the black USB. Blue USB 3.0s, black USB 2.0s, but now we have this red one here. This is USB 3.1. And so when we're talking about speeds, USB 2.0, we're talking half a gigabit per second. With USB 3.0, we're talking 5 gigabits per second. And then with USB 3.1, we're talking 10 gigabits per second. So what it means is more speed, faster. So that's really only going to come into play with an external storage device. So if you have an external hard drive, an external SSD, or a flash drive that's USB 3.1, it can go that much faster. When it comes to hooking up things like keyboards and mice and yokes, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But it is something nice to have, especially if you buy in the future a USB 3.1 drive. Now another thing this has is a USB Type-C connector. Let me move my finger. There it is right there. USB Type-C. It's small. It kind of looks like a miniature HDMI connection, but it's right there above my finger. It's called a USB Type-C connector. In case you were wondering, these are Type-B USB connections. This is the new Type-C. The new MacBook, I think Pro or Air, one of the two, is coming with this. So what that does is this port supports USB 3.1, so that 10 gigabits per second, but it also supports more power, so you can send more power across that connection for charging devices or powering external hard drives, or maybe one day powering the Cytec panels if they use this type of connection. So what you'll see in the future too is a lot of laptops will come with this type of connector, and you'll actually charge your laptop with this connection. You might even be able to plug your phone into it and charge your laptop with your phone, or charge your phone with your laptop. So it's a pretty flexible connection, and it's really nice to have. Another innovation, and this has actually been around since the White Lightning, but I want to point it out since I have a motherboard here, is on this board, this is the sound, stuff to do with the sound. Well, they have this line here, and this line actually lights up. That's not important that it lights up. But this line represents the fact that the sound is isolated from the rest of the board, so you get more pure sound. You're not getting interference with everything else going on the board, because there's a lot going on over here, processing and memory and storage. And so by what they're representing here is they have basically drawn a line and separated the sound circuitry from the rest of the board, so you get a clearer sound. They also have a really nice amplifier built in, so that you're able to power external speakers pretty effectively. So that's something really nice, especially if you're into sound. I think that kind of wraps up the differences between the White Lightning and the new titanium system. Now, some of the things we're continuing to do that we did on the White Lightning is use a really nice cooler. You can see the cooler here installed, but this is what one looks like not installed. So what we've got here is we've got these copper heat pipes, and so the processor sits right up against this square area here. And then these copper heat pipes just go straight across everywhere that the processor contacts. And of course the heat travels up these copper heat pipes, and then you have these fins, these aluminum fins that soak up the heat from the copper heat pipes, and then of course the fan blows through the aluminum fins to cool everything off. So what this allows us to do is we overclock it just a little bit. We don't get crazy. We do just overclock it a little. And it also aids in just overall system stability, because when you're stressing the processor, if you max out all 4 cores, you're going to hit a thermal threshold. And when the processor hits 90 degrees, it's going to slow down. And that's a good thing. So what the Intel processors do is if they get too hot, they go, whoa, 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 we don't want to have a meltdown here. We're going to slow down. And so you may not realize what's going on. Hey, why did my frames per second just drop? Or why did things seem to get kind of, slow? Well, it might be because of what's called thermal throttling. The CPU is throttling itself down to prevent itself from burning up. And of course, it probably reduces the life of the processor as well if it's constantly running at this really high temperature. So this is a substantial upgrade over the retail or standard Intel cooler. It's not crazy expensive, so we're not having to mark the system up a huge amount for this cooler, but it's a really nice cooler for the money. It does a terrific job. You can spend more money on a cooler, but it's not going to make much of a difference. This is kind of the sweet spot on a cooler, and that's why we use it. And it travels nicely too. The way it mounts to the motherboard, we don't have to worry about it coming loose in shipping, because that's obviously something that would be very concerning. I think that wraps everything up. Oh, well, one more thing. The cooling on the system, we have a fan here blowing out the back, and we also have a fan blowing out the top. So this way and this way. And so whatever heat is coming off of this heat sink is going either straight out the back or straight out the top. And then we also have a fan coming in the front which cools the hard drives nicely. So the cooling is really good on this Phantom case, and it's why we're continuing to use it in our titanium line. If you have any questions, please send me an email. It's michael@xforcepc.com. Again, that is michael@xforcepc.com.